Hey, the research I'm going to present today is all about emojis and emotions. We all know how important emojis are in the area of human-computer interaction and how emojis dominate our digital communication. In most cases, we utilize emojis to express a certain feeling, a certain emotion, and this is also confirmed by prior literature. So for instance, if we consider all text messages that contain emojis, more than 60% are meant to transport a certain emotion. What we also know from literature is that there are assignments between emotions and emojis. So researchers have already proposed a certain mapping between these two entities. However, emojis have some issues as well. First of all, emojis look different on different platforms. If we consider emojis on iOS and emojis on Android, they're way too different, and this could cause a potential misinterpretation and a conflict situation. Same applies for the cultural background, of course. So if our sender and the recipient are way too different regarding their backgrounds, this could also lead to a potential conflict if emojis are utilized. So from prior literature, we know that we can map emotions to emojis. We want to take this research one step further by analyzing the intensity of emojis. In other words, we want to construct intensity scales for basic emotions. Taking happiness as an example, we want to see if we can come up with such a scale that goes from a little happy to very happy, utilizing just emojis. So why do we need such scales? Apart from digital communication, you should also think about visualization, because everybody understands emojis. So having a sophisticated visualization toolkit that includes such intensity gradations is beneficial if you want to construct precise and fine-tuned visualizations for the broad audience. Another application area is user assessment. Think about, for instance, questionnaires for children. We could utilize emojis to capture the emotional state of the child, and that's why we need such scales. So how to construct such scales? Our main idea was to utilize a survey where we would ask participants to assign emotions to emojis and then rate the perceived intensity. Now there are two big issues. First of all, there are way too many emojis. And the second issue is that you still need a set of basic emotions that we could display. Now that's why we also did a pre-study, and the main goal of this pre-study was to filter out all emojis that don't correspond to emotions, so that are not perceived as an emotion. And the pre-study was also used to establish the basic emotional categories, and it turned out that the results of our pre-study was closely related to the basic emotions already proposed by Ekman. So these are our 7 basic emotions that we utilized for the main study. The main study was conducted as an online survey with over 1,000 participants worldwide. We used various social media channels such as Twitter and Reddit to acquire the participants, and the procedure was as follows. So first of all, the participants have to assign an emotion to the displayed emoji. They could pick from the predefined categories such as anger, happiness, sadness, and so on, or they could also say that it is no emotion, or they could provide their own emotional label if they would like to. Then the participants have to assign the intensity using a 7-point scale, which ranges from, for instance, a little happy to very happy. Now let's talk about the results. In a first step, we evaluated the assignment of emotions to emojis. For our 68 emojis, we can confirm a certain overlap with prior literature in this area, but we have also found a number of interesting, let's call them in-between emojis. So emojis that are somewhere in between two emotional categories, which is often the case for instance, sadness and annoyance emojis. Unfortunately, I cannot cover all the results, so we'll just focus on the main contribution on these intensity scales. So what we did for each emotion is we constructed distinct intensity clusters, which means that all emojis within one cluster are significantly different to all other emojis within other clusters regarding their perceived intensity. As you can see, the amount of clusters and the distribution of clusters varies between emotions, and we have emotions that are sampled quite well, like happiness or sadness, and also emotions, strong emotions like anger or disgust, that have only a few representatives on the rather extreme side of the scale. Now, there are even more design implications and considerations that you can find in our paper. We also included culture as an important factor into our analysis because we wanted to construct a universally applicable visualization toolkit. So what we did is we subdivided our worldwide participants into 3 groups according to the so-called Lewis model. Multi-active countries are known for their compassionate discussions and lots of gestures. Linear active people are usually rather introverted and unemotional. People from reactive countries such as Vietnam or Japan or China are usually considered introverted and good listeners. And again, I'll just focus on the main findings. First of all, the intensity scales are still valid, so the ordering of emojis is persistent. What's interesting is that we can actually observe a certain shift towards a more intense perception of emojis for the linear active group. In other words, people from countries such as Germany, UK, and US tend to interpret the emojis more intense compared to other cultures. One possible explanation would be that other cultures are just much more used to nonverbal communication, and that's why they tend to downplay the perception of an emoji compared to the linear active group, where people are not that experienced with nonverbal means of communication, such as gestures and so on. So to summarize, we were able to construct intensity scales for 7 basic emotions, and we also studied the influence of culture on such scales. Of course, there are several limitations in our work that you can find in the paper alongside with other results. And please don't hesitate to reach out in case you have any questions or concerns. Thank you very much for your attention. Bye-bye.